Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this Saw movie review video as part of my current series where I'm taking a look at the entire Saw franchise. I reviewed the first movie, that's up on my channel if you want to check it out. Today, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the first sequel, which is Saw 2, part of this eight movie collection here that I have both on Blu ray and DVD. Um, so Saw 2 is a movie that I think I saw once, maybe one and a half times, but a long time ago, like 10 or 12 years ago, prior to this review, of course. Um, I remember thinking it was pretty good, although it didn't quite grab my attention the way the first one did when I watched it way back when. But upon rewatch for this review, I have to say I think this holds up pretty well to the first movie. And so let's just go ahead and get into it. So Saw 2 is a 2005 horror film directed by Darren Lynn Bousman and written by Lee Winnell and Bousman. It is a sequel to the 2004 Saw and the second installment in the Saw film series. In the film, a group of ex-convicts are trapped by the Jigsaw Killer inside a house and must pass a series of deadly tests to retrieve the antidote for a nerve agent that will kill them in 2 hours. So that's an interesting premise. So basically, the movie opens with police informant Michael awaking in a room with a spike filled mask locked around his neck. He refuses to retrieve the key from his eye and is killed when the mask closes on his head. At the scene of Michael's murder, Detective Carey finds a message for her former partner, Detective Eric Matthews. Matthews joins Carey and Officer Reagan, leading a SWAT team, to the factory which produced the lock for Michael's trap. There they apprehend John Kramer, the Jigsaw Killer, who indicates who indicates computer monitors showing 8 people trapped in a house, including his only known survivor, Amanda, Matthew's son Daniel, and 6 other victims: Xavier, Jonas, Laura, Addison, Obi, and Gus. A nerve agent filling the house will kill them all within 2 hours, but John assures Matthews that if he follows the rules of his own game, he will see Daniel again. At Carrie's urging, Matthews agrees to buy time for the tech team to arrive and trace the video signal. During their conversation, John reveals to Matthews that his main motivation for his game was a suicide attempt after his cancer diagnosis, which led to a newfound appreciation for life. The games are intended to help his victims develop the same appreciation. So that's the setup and the premise for Saw 2 from 2005. As far as the cast goes, we have Tobin Bell as Jigsaw slash John, Shawnee Smith as Amanda Young, Donnie Wahlberg as Eric Matthews, Eric Knutson or Knutson, Eric Knutson as Daniel Matthews, Frankie G as Xavier, Glenn Plummer as Jonas, Emmanuel Vager as Addison, Beverly Mitchell as Laura, and Dina Meyer as Carrie. So yeah, that was close. That's to set up the premise and the cast for Saw 2 from 2005. Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's just as good as the first one, and in some ways, even better than the first one. We'll get into that towards the end of my review, and actually towards the end of the series. You'll have to tune in to find out which one I like more. That reminds me, though, I forgot to give a rating for Saw, the first one, in my review for that video. So I'm going to add that here to this one. I'm going to give the original Saw from 2004 an 8.5 out of 10. It's obviously a modern day classic. It does, for what it does it very well. And that's largely because of James Wan and Lee Winnell's involvement. Um, and just the uniqueness and the idea of it. So 8.5 out of 10 for the first movie. And I'll let you know what my rating is for this one once I go through my pros and cons. So, starting with the things I liked about Saw 2, the movie definitely has a larger scale than the first one. The first one pretty much takes place in like 3 settings, and 70% of it is in that dilapidated bathroom. This one, there's a lot more locations. You can tell there's a bigger budget, so the story is able to travel further to help tell its narrative, and I think it does so effectively as a result. More locations, more settings, just larger in scale and scope, basically, and that's never a bad thing. Although it doesn't guarantee a great movie, but it does sort of give you a little bit more creative freedom and a little bit more storytelling ability, I think. So that's definitely the first thing I noticed. The opening, I think, of this movie really engages the viewer right away with having someone in a room with a trap uh, that's in a trap and the outcome of that. It helps to remind the viewer of what they're watching and what they're in store for, basically, with this movie. So it kind of brings you back into the Saw universe, but also lets you know it's going to be a little bloodier, a little gorier, a little bit more ambitious, maybe than the first one in some ways. So I really enjoyed that opening. I thought that was a great way to open this movie. I feel like this movie's definitely more bloody and gorier than the first one. If you watch my review, you know that with the first movie, it sort of has a reputation of being one of the gorier movies, especially the 2000s. The old torture porn helped kick that off, but it's really not when you watch it. I think Lee Winnell is more of a visual, more of a psychological, scary director, and he's very good at it. This director was clear that he wanted it was more about the gore, more about the blood, and this movie certainly has it. They really ramp up the blood with the kills, and even more gore is shown related to the characters and the traps that end up taking them out, basically. So if you're a gore hound, like I mentioned in the first film, that one might not satisfy you. This one will satisfy you more. um so that's one thing. The acting, I think, is much better by the leads, particularly in this movie. If you watch my review for the first movie, I'm not a huge fan of the acting by Lee Winnell and Carrie Elwes. I think it's very weak, and it's the one thing that really hurts that movie, in my opinion, especially as the two of them are together, trapped in that bathroom. But here, I think Donnie Wahlberg and Tobin Bell take it to a much higher level acting wise, and they have a really good antagonistic chemistry between them as they're having conversations and talking. Both actors really do a great job, and they're really putting forth their best for these characters, I felt like. So that's definitely a huge improvement. The traps are ratcheted up a bit more. Feel like they're more creative and once again larger in scale because of the budget of this movie. They're really unique and effective. The one, of course, most people will talk about is the opening as with the trap on the head that ends up closing with the all the spikes inside the mask that close in the guy's head. But then I always remembered, and I remembered the first time I watched, just in the late 2000s, the pit of syringes, basically that Amanda is thrown into. Shawnee Smith's character gets thrown in. She's got like 18 of them sticking in her arms and her neck and everywhere else. That was because she's searching for a key in there. That was a really that's one of those traps you don't forget about, and I definitely remembered in this movie. But yeah, overall, I feel like the traps, they were pretty simple but effective in the first movie. In this movie, you can tell they try to a little bit more. They reach a little bit more, try to make them more unique, and I appreciated that. I think the ending 15 minutes or so of this movie with it has a great double twist. There's two different twists that happen. One is sort of having to do with the narrative of this movie. Well, I guess they both have to do with the narrative of this movie. One of it is more of a character twist, and one is more of a narrative twist, and they both really work effectively. In fact, as much as I'm a fan of the ending of the first movie, the ending twist, and it's iconic, of course, everybody talks about it. I almost think in some ways the ending of this movie is even better. Like the twist works even better, both of them, both from that narrative standpoint and from a character standpoint. Yeah, I just love it. I think that's I'm not going to say it's the best part of the movie because I think the whole movie's good, but I really enjoyed the double twist at the end. And I do feel like it surpasses the twist of the first movie at the end a little bit, especially in terms of not seeing it coming and being done so effectively to fit the overall movie in the previous 80 minutes or so that are set up. It's just really good. The pacing works really well in this movie as well. You have more characters that are trapped as opposed to just two in a bathroom. You have like eight here in a house. Again, larger scale, more settings, that type of thing, but also more characters. And I think that helps the pacing. You get more kills as a result. There's numerous traps, as well as this whole father son narrative that's going on between Donnie Wahlberg's character and sort of not a strange son, but his son that he's definitely got difficulties with that you see at the beginning of this movie a little bit. Um, all that being connected at the same time to this house and the characters there, how they all tie that together, I think is really effective and works really well. There's of course different twists and turns throughout the movie, just like there was in the first one, even before those ending twists. So yeah, I really like that. I like that Tobin Bell got more screen time in this movie as Jigsaw. He's definitely a prominent part of this movie. In the first movie, it was really like the last couple scenes or the last scene, the last few frames, and then also you don't really see him that much. You just see like a shadowy figure in a cloak. In this movie, he's definitely front and center, sitting there, and his dialogue, his as I said, his chemistry with with Donnie Wahlberg's character is really effective, and Tobin Bell is great in this role. Um, and then I have to say, let's see, this is a great sequel because it does everything that you want from a sequel. It doesn't repeat beat for beat the first movie and all the everything that happened in the first movie, but it adds to it. It adds to the mythology. It adds some more depth, some more layers to that first movie, while keeping the original concept and what we've come to know and love about this franchise. I think this one does it in spades, too. I think it does it really well. So that's my final pro. I just think they do a great job really building on the first movie, despite the fact that this came out only a year after the first movie. So yeah, definitely a lot of pros for this movie. Getting into some of the cons, there's not a lot like the first movie. I just have a few. Some of the acting by the other characters, mainly the characters that are stuck in the house, especially Frankie G as Xavier. Ugh. It's not very good in my opinion. Mostly just serviceable by a lot of them. But Frankie G is just so over the top in that character. That didn't work for me as all. I realized his character wasn't supposed to be that likable. He's a convict and all that, but man, he did not portray that character well. Um, well, it's just not great acting overall from that standpoint. It doesn't quite have the iconic or creepy and effective visuals that the first movie had in terms of being introduced to Billy the Puppet or the voice of Jigsaw. It doesn't have the overall originality of the first movie. Not that they're ever really going to with any of these sequels, but nothing really stands out from a visual that's visually striking in this movie the way that the first movie did. And that's, I think, where James Wan really comes in because he's sort of the master of psychological visual horror, knowing how to set up a scare and delivering it. This movie's not really. This is more of sort of an interwoven mystery with torture porn and traps involved, blood and gore, but it doesn't quite have the James Wan creepy, scary kind of stuff going on like the first one had. There's a bit more of a repetitiveness to the whole Jigsaw killer and the traps that are associated, etc. That will only increase as the movies go on as well, and that's kind of inevitable. It's kind of unavoidable, but I don't know, guys. Those are the cons that I have for Saw 2. There's really not a lot there. This is a fantastic movie. I think it does rival the first movie a lot more so than I thought 10 or 15 years ago when I first saw these movies. I'm going to give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. You're going to have to tune into the end of my month ranking video at the end of this series to find out what's one I put ahead of the other. But like the first movie, I'm going to give Saw 2 from 2005 an 8.5 out of 10. So go ahead and comment down below what you guys think of Saw 2. Do you like it as much as the first one, more than the first one? Why or why not? Please like this video and hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews for this series. Still got 7 more movies to take a look at, plus my ranking and wrap up video at the end. And please subscribe to my channel as well so you don't miss any of my great horror content, not only this series, but what I have planned for the rest of the year on my channel. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you're enjoying this series so far. I hope everybody's having a great summer. But of course, stay scared. Bye.